Hello from the studio in Nitro, West Virginia. This is Unreasonable Down. It's a podcast about West Virginia University basketball. I'm Josh Witt. Sorry for the delayed episode. Life happens. And that game happened last night. And West Virginia is now 1-0 in must-win games. It's good to have a 0 in the loss column in must-win games. After hanging on. Let's be very clear. That was a hanging on situation. 62-59 victory over Cincinnati. So first sweep of the season. Great. Puts West Virginia right outside the top half of the Big 12. And that's important because if you're 5th through 8, then you get a one-round bye. And it keeps, obviously, the most important part, it keeps West Virginia's NCAA tournament chances alive. And congrats to the Mountaineers' first weekday win of the calendar year. So I don't know if Darren DeVries on the whiteboard wrote down, pretend this is Saturday. I know I thought about, watching the replay today, I thought about, hey, this is the weekend. And all of that worked. And for the third game in a row, this game was decided with WVU in it in the last 4 minutes of the game. And I would argue there's symbolism in this game being tied at 50-50 with 4 minutes left. Of course, it's tied at 50 because Jizzle James hits a long-distance three. The last 4 minutes tells you how WVU is existing on the bubble. And it's the last 4 minutes of this game kind of flows like West Virginia's season so far. With the first 3 minutes and 45 seconds of the last 4 minutes, it reminds you of the first 17 games of the season, where West Virginia, 13-4, ranked in the top 25. And in this game, West Virginia outscores Cincinnati 12-3 in those 3 minutes and 45 seconds. Offense is ending with made baskets. Defense is getting stops. Javon Small seemingly icing the game at the free throw line. Then the next 12 seconds. So first 3:45 remind you of the high mark of the season. The next 12 seconds feels like the last 8 games leading up to the Cincinnati game, where you fall out of the rankings, you stack up some losses, and in those 12 seconds, it starts with JP at the free throw line. 1-1, WVU up 9. And if he makes the front end of the 1-1, it's a 10-point game. And just by math, that's a 4-possession game. Total buffoonery to send a game to overtime. But it still would be really hard to give up the lead if he misses. But 3-possession game, 3 threes in 16 seconds, that's not impossible. Of course, JP, who had a really good game, a really good second half, he misses the front end. And by missing the front end, like he almost missed the front end of the rim. That was almost an air ball. But it wasn't. Grazes the rim. Cincinnati rebound. Few seconds later, a Bearcat throws a pass that goes over the intended receiver. And of course it doesn't go out of bounds. It somehow finds Dan Skillings. And Dan Skillings gets his ball about 5 steps behind the 3-point line on the sideline. And he chucks it. And that ball, which is in the air forever, banks in. Of course it does. Now, Cincinnati's down 6. Amani's taking it out. Amani, great game on the offensive side. Throws a slow arching pass to Sincere. Cincinnati guy comes out of nowhere from the right side, deflects it right to Skillings. Skillings much closer this time to the 3-point line, but he's behind the 3-point line, throws it up, swish. Now it's a 3-point game. Timeout, West Virginia. Go back to take it out. can't get the ball in, calls their last timeout. Then Joe Yesufu, who had a pretty good game, he runs the baseline, throws it into Sincere, who also had a pretty good game. It looks like a Cincinnati guy deflects it out of bounds. Of course, the ref says it's off Sincere, and of course, they don't have a camera angle to reverse the call. So now West Virginia goes from up 9 at the free throw line to up 3, Cincinnati taking it out on their own baseline with a chance to tie the game. And Javon Small, who battled through injury to have a solid game, loses track of his man that floats to the top of the key. Javon stays in the paint. I guess he thought he went to the other wing. His man gets the ball at the top of the key and gets a clean look to tie the game. And I ask you, when he caught the ball wide open, did you think we were going to overtime? Because I felt it in my bones that it's overtime and disaster in overtime and close the coffin door on the NCAA tournament chances. It happened that fast, from up 9 with the ball shooting the front end of a 1-on-1 to, in under 20 seconds, saying the season's over with 5 games left in the regular season. It happened that fast. And now the question is, if the last 4 seconds of the game symbolizes the rest of the season. Because if so, then West Virginia, who is on the bubble, is going to fall on the right side of the bubble. They're going to hang on because the Cincinnati guy shorts a 3, West Virginia gets the rebound, and West Virginia hangs on to win. And I think this is what it is for the rest of the season. I don't think West Virginia is going to find an extra gear in the regular season, find their stride in these last games, go into the NCAA tournament with momentum. I just don't see that for this group. I think the best case scenario is that West Virginia is going to hang on like they did at the end of this game to make the NCAA tournament. And that's fine. Do just enough to get there. And then from there, you're in the tournament. And it's all cream cheese if you make it. I mean, making the NCAA tournament in year 1, total roster turnover, new coach, losing one of your 2 best players 8 games into the season, and get to the NCAA tournament. That's an amazing accomplishment that builds momentum for next season. And so I'm hopeful that that last shot is indicative of what we'll get in these last 5 games, where West Virginia doesn't go to another level, but is able to do just enough, hang on, and just find a way to get a ticket to the dance. And then you don't play Big 12 teams. Now you're back in non-conference play. They've got to prepare for you. And I think this team can be a difficult matchup. And I think Javon Small, who has never been to the NCAA tournament, I'm guessing here, he's going to want to make the most of this experience. But let's talk about the good of the last 3 games. And the biggest good that's come out of these last 3 games is that the role players are stepping up. This is the 3rd time in the last 4 games where someone besides Javon Small has led the team in scoring. And West Virginia has 2 wins in those 4 games. And the leading scorer in those 2 wins was Amani Hansberry. And on the offensive side of the floor, Amani was aggressive and he made shots that were needed. And he did his work inside. 7 offensive rebounds. One of those offensive rebounds, he did a no-look pass out to Jonathan Powell for a 3. Excellent. Veteran play. And he made a couple threes himself, so we're back on we want Amani to shoot at least 4 threes. He got to that 4 benchmark. He made 2 of them, including one in the last 4 minutes to break the 50-50 tie. And his final points in that game was a post-up that was, it reminded you of Juwan Roberts, but more smooth. Like, I'm getting a bucket here. And just got it spin, finished with the left hand. Loved it. Defense, a different story. Let's not get too far into what Amani did on defense. Let's focus on the positive. And he is a big reason West Virginia won this game. 17 points, 13 rebounds. West Virginia is 5-0 this season when Amani has 10-plus rebounds. Javon, not 100% step thumping out there like a pirate, but still guts out 16 points, 4 assists, made his free throws. Jonathan Powell's game, he goes from one lane, he's just there to shoot threes, to his game is rounded out as this season has progressed. This is the second straight game where he's had 9 rebounds. Did anybody have Jonathan Powell being one of the best rebounders of the team? But he's given it effort. 10 of his 12 points came in the second half. Solid on defense. He finishes with 12 points, 9 rebounds. Speaking of rebounds, are you sitting down? West Virginia was +9 in rebounds, and that's the first time they've won the rebounding battle in all of Big 12 play. The Kansas game, they were even with Kansas. And so they needed that because especially Amani's offensive rebounds led the points. That was a big deal. West Virginia, another are you sitting down? West Virginia +10 and made free throws. I mean, the previous 3 games, West Virginia was -38. And I don't know what West Virginia did. You know, DeVries is joking about their free throw defense. Whatever they did against Cincinnati, they need to keep that up. Cincinnati was 2 for 7 from the free throw line. And unfortunately, those stats don't come into play if JP makes those free throws. We don't have to marvel at, like, they needed these statistical outliers to win a must-win game. But that's how it ended. I mean, I called my dad to check on his actual well-being. Because the end of that game, it had to have caused an episode for somebody. And I'm not wishing that on anybody. It just was, the fan base jokes about Stress Virginia. That is prime Stress Virginia. Yeah, I mean, you just, and if that Cincinnati Bearcat makes that 3, I don't even know if it matters if West Virginia wins in overtime. You just, Darren DeVries was kind of giggly. Like, you know, kind of like you've seen something traumatic and it's not funny, but that's what comes out of you as far as energy. That's what DeVries had after the game of, like, he didn't say this, but his energy screamed, thank goodness that was almost a total disaster. And so he was a little giggly. And shout out to him. I hope everybody was giggly because that was a must-win game. West Virginia wins a must-win game, and they win it despite almost giving it away. Unreasonable Doubt is under the Smoking Musket umbrella. Go to smokingmusket.com. Read posts about WVU sports, Daily Throwdown. Check that out. Go to the Discord. We're talking about WVU sports and other stuff on the Smoking Musket Discord. Link for that is in the show notes. Listen to West by Pod, the WVU football podcast under the Smoking Musket umbrella. Do all that stuff. Smoking Musket. The next game for WVU, I think it's going to be a problem. It's Saturday, 1 p.m., back to the shadows of ESPN Plus, and West Virginia makes their 4th and final trip to Texas this season, 3rd time this month, to play the Texas Tech Red Raiders. So the old take a flight to get close to Lubbock. I don't know how far you get to Lubbock on a plane, but there's got to be some driving involved. You play early on Lubbock, and then you get back home same day. But just Big 12 schedulers, brutal back-to-back weekend trips to Texas from West Virginia. I don't know if you've looked at Google Maps, but that's a chore. Just when you go to Texas, just mix in a couple of games. That's all I'm asking. You've done it before. You can do it again. I know you can do it. West Virginia's going to Lubbock to play the Texas Tech Red Raiders, who have been outstanding this season. They're currently projected to be a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. They still have an outside chance to catch up to Houston. They get to play Houston again before the end of the season. Houston sitting pretty. They only have one loss, and it's to Texas Tech in Big 12 play. And Texas Tech beat Houston at Houston, and nobody does that. So that's how good Texas Tech is. Also unfortunate for West Virginia that the Red Raiders are coming off of a loss, so they have not lost 2 in a row this season. And when you look at the statistics, there's not a weak spot. I mean, they do pretty much everything good, and they have a really good coach. West Virginia will be a substantial underdog, and this is one that could get out of hand. And at any point, and that's okay. Texas Tech is really good at basketball. West Virginia's good at basketball, but it can get out of hand. I don't want that to happen. If it does, you got to get Javon Small some rest. That's the key. If you're down 15 with 4 minutes left, pull Javon Small. In theory, I mean, watch the Cincinnati game. A team can score 6 points in 3 seconds. But we got to get Javon healthy and get him as much rest as possible. And if it's not looking good, then err on the side of getting that man some rest. He needs to be as close to 100% as possible for this final stretch, because West Virginia is going to come back home from Lubbock, barring a miracle win. They'll be back home for their second must-win game of the season. They are 1-0 in must-win games. They need to go 2-0 in must-win games, and it's going to be another weekday game, this time a Tuesday 9 p.m. game versus TCU. And the last 9 p.m. home game was against Arizona State, and we all know how that went. I heard they had the flu, but also, if everybody's healthy, not a Tuesday 9 p.m. crowd is not going to be the most into it. I want to be nice. If I lived closer, it would be easier for any game in Morgantown. But 2.5 hours away, it kind of limits me to weekends. Not that I could make a difference in that. Anyway, second must-win game. You turn back around from Lubbock to come home to play revenge game against TCU. I guess the other option is to defy the odds and come back with a road win against one of the top teams in the Big 12. And UCF can claim that. On New Year's Eve, they went to Lubbock and beat the Red Raiders. How did UCF win? They were +7 and made threes. And Texas Tech had their worst performance in a game from 3 for the season. They went 3 for 16. And UCF also was +5 in made free throws. So that's going to be a challenge for West Virginia to win the free throw battle. I don't think that this is a negative, but Texas Tech offensively don't get to the line very much. So that's something. And then West Virginia is good at defending a 3, so would it be the most shocking thing if they're able to keep Texas Tech under control from 3 and maybe get in that worst of the year territory? It's not out of the realm of possibility, but that's one side of that. West Virginia's also got to get hot from 3, and you got to have Javon Small do one of those unconscious make 3 threes in a row kind of things, maybe do 2 of those. Can Amani make a couple of threes? Could JP get hot? That's a lot to ask. You're asking for a lot of ifs to be yeses. So I doubt it, but that's why they play the game. It would be a miraculous win if they're able to come back from Lubbock with a victory. Only because Texas Tech is coming off a loss. If Texas Tech is on like a winning streak and they're looking ahead because they've got, I don't know if Houston is the next game for them, but they've got some important games coming up, then maybe. But coming off a loss, that's just a bad spot for West Virginia. We'll see what happens. That's it for this episode of Unreasonable Doubt. Listen on all the platforms, or just pick one: Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, Overcast Podcasts, YouTube. Until next time, I'm Josh Witt. WVU for the 2024-2025 season. They have 16 wins and they have 10 losses.